All right, everybody, welcome back on this week's episode of the Warrior Mindset Motivation Podcast. I'm your host, retired Army Sergeant First Class Eric Castillo. I'm also a life coach at Zimi Wellness Center and Indigenous Sovereignty. And today, another awesome guest. He's U.S. Marine Corps. Since I've been on the Marine Corps kick lately, apparently, I did want to join the Marines before I joined the Army. But the only reason why I didn't join the Marines is because they couldn't guarantee me a specific job, and the Army did. So I kind of just veered away from the Marines. But then I guess this might be the universe saying, hey, look, you were supposed to be in the Marine Corps there, buddy, because I keep getting all these Marines to come on. So, but here I have Charles Reed. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. He was in Vietnam. And I'm not going to take too much away because he's got an interesting background, actually. When I read his biography, it's pretty interesting. And it's got some stories in there, especially with his time in Vietnam and what he did and things like that. So, Charles, let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Eric, well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in Iowa. Went to school there, got out of high school at 16, worked for a while, wasn't ready for college, wasn't ready for the world, didn't know what to do with myself, joined the Marine Corps, enlisted for 4 years. My father was a Navy officer during World War II and was still in the reserves at that point in time. He actually came to my graduation and made sure that he did his introduction with the commanding general and so on, because he was a senior Navy officer. So it was interesting. But I did my basic at MCRD, San Diego, advanced infantry training at Pendleton, was then stationed at Pendleton, where I was in the computer business. My first job, once I got out of training, was key punch operator. I did a week of that, and then a week of doing proofing, and then they put me in the machine room, and I became a peripheral machine operator. Then I was transferred to Okinawa, and in Okinawa they sent me over to IBM to be trained as a COBOL programmer.
Oh,
and later I became a systems engineer. I spent 16 months in Okinawa and asked for repeated transfers to Vietnam. I was young and stupid, So, and I finally got my transfer. It was a funny transition because my orders were going to be for drill instructor school, which I didn't particularly want. But instead, I got my transfer to Vietnam. And when I got to Nam, I couldn't be there and be in the computer place. I mean, it was behind huge walls and so on and so forth. So I got myself transferred to the local infantry company that did all the area work around Red Beach. It was a provisional rifle company. And I spent about 5 months doing that. Interdiction, ambushes, so on and so forth. Got my combat action ribbon. Saw limited combat, nothing huge. But, the first time that bullet went whizzing past my left ear, not my right ear, but my left ear, and I asked myself what the hell I was doing there. And of course, since I was the computer guy, they made me carry the damn radio.
Yeah.
So I carried a Prick 25 out there in the jungle and in the rice paddies and everything else, which, makes you just a target.
Right. It's funny how they do that with the radios, because I did the same thing when I became a squad leader and a platoon sergeant. I'd be like, okay, who's really good with computers? And then you see a couple hands. You're the radio guy. And there you see their face go, what the hell? And it's like, yep, because you'll figure out the radio issues if there's a problem. So you're the guy or the girl.
And that's exactly what they did. They stuck me with the goddamn radio. I remember, and the bold Prick 25s were, they didn't always work real well. And I remember one time we'd come out and we were trying to get a ride back to the base. We'd finished for the evening, the ambush, and we were coming back and trying to get a pickup, and the radio wouldn't work. And Polo, who was Samoan, big guy, he used to climb coconut trees in Hawaii before the war. And it was nice to have him on patrol with us, because middle of the afternoon, it'd get hot, he'd climb a local coconut tree and get us fresh coconuts. And so we'd get cooling coconut milk. Nice. So he was pretty good. But he was bitching at me because the radio wasn't working. And I said, here, you try it. And Polo takes his hand and he goes, whap, right in the middle of my chest, throws me back, and I land on the prick 25. And you can hear it crumple. And I said, well, it sure as hell won't work now. So we actually flagged down a Vietnamese 3-wheel cart thing, and loaded everybody up on it and drove us back to Red Beach down Highway 1. That was crazy.
Oh, geez.
When I got back from Vietnam, I was stationed in Kansas City, and met and married my wife.
Oh, nice.
My wife had 5 children when I married her. She was 10 years older than I was. As I told you before the show, she got herself a boy toy and raised him right.
Yeah.
And as far as the 5 kids, I just claim insanity. But we were married. We were married for 45 years before she passed. She passed about 6 years ago. So it was a good marriage. It wasn't perfect, but it was a good marriage.
That's good.
And I got out in 1971 and found, of course, that business community did not value my military experience. We'd moved down to Dallas, and I interviewed with an insurance company here.
Mm-hmm.
And they were moving from IBM 1401 to IBM 360, from an autocoder program to a COBOL program. I had just spent the last year in Kansas City doing exactly that with the then current Joint Unified Military Pay System, writing the Marine Corps portion of that to convert it all from 1401 autocoder to IBM 360 COBOL. And the SOB that was doing the interviews didn't think my experience applied in the business world.
Even though you were doing the exact same thing.
It was the only time I ever told a recruiter that he was an idiot. Which we'll get into that. When I did that in the military, that's why I didn't re-enlist.
Right.
And about 6 or 7 years later, the company went bankrupt. And I think it was because they hired the wrong people.
Yeah.
So I said at that point, I need to get my credentials. I went to college, got my bachelor's, my master's, sat for and passed my CPA exam while I was still in graduate school. Went to work for Texas Instruments. For the next 15 years, worked for various corporations, large and small. Did corporate, did turnarounds, had a lot of fun, a lot of experience. Realized I was never going to run a major corporation. I didn't have the political skills. I was unwilling to stab people in the back and toss them off the ladder.
Mm-hmm.
So if I was going to run a company, like my father, and he had his own company, I was going to have to start my own. So 30 years ago, Ruth and I, my wife, started our own company. And here I am today. It's been a great journey. Had a lot of fun. You work with your wife some, and I grew up with my parents worked together. And I thought, a married couple working together was just natural.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a natural act. Let me tell you. It was a whole new learning experience working with your wife. So, but we got through it, and we, like I said, we're married for 45 years. So,
well, yeah, when you work with your spouse, you each have different work ethics. So it's learning to find the balance of the strengths and the weaknesses, and knowing, okay, I'm strong in this and weak in this, and she's strong and weak, and then you put those together, and then you learn each other's habits on how you work, and then it'll become a nice oiled machine. I think that the hard part is when people started is actually trying to figure out what their partner's strengths and weaknesses are, and don't have the patience for it.
Right.
Because especially like with a veteran mind, I'm not speaking for all of them, but like for most veterans' minds, especially those in combat jobs, it's very like meticulous, very deliberate. Now, where maybe your partners are like that, so you have to like learn to apply that in a way to where he or she can get it and apply those to her weaknesses, so that way then you guys they can come together and make the business work.
That's a part of it. Another part is, and we all learn this after we get out, that the hierarchical structure that exists in the military, where you either jump for them or they jump for you, doesn't work in business. And it doesn't work with your wife.
Well, I'm lucky then because mine jumps for me and I jump for her, so I'm lucky there.
And what else do you lie about?
Oh, not here. No lies here.
Okay, I need to ask her how she feels about that.
Oh, she's actually watching and listening, so I'm sure she'll write something. So, I do have a question though. When you were getting out for that part of that transition, how was that? Like, how was? I know you spoke about you kind of were when we spoke offline, you were kind of like pushed out a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I mean, here's what had happened. I'm a computer programmer, systems engineer, and we had an officer in there, a major, who wasn't a computer person. And I'm too smart for my own britches at times. And he and I got into it, and I explained to him in terms that he couldn't object to that he was incompetent for his job. And he was. But he couldn't do anything about it personally. So he had 2 junior lieutenants write me up for petty stuff.
Right.
Got me busted from E5 back to E4. But, you know, Chesty Puller said, if you've never been busted, you're not a real Marine. So, you know, it cost me quite a few $1,000s when I separated. But I ended up getting an RE4 on my DD-214, not recommended for reenlistment. So they didn't want me. So my term was up. I got out and left.
So during that piece, like when you work on the out portion, like how a lot of veterans struggle with identity, mental health, like kind of feeling lost, especially for someone like me. I did 17 and a half years. So like I joined at 17. So getting out for me was like, what am I doing? Who am I, first of all? Because all I know is the uniform. So it took me a little while to figure that out. And hell, I'm still figuring it out, just not as much as I was a couple years ago. Now I kind of have some sort of bearing and heading on where I'm going, just not really sure because it's all uncharted waters. So for you, how was that for you?
It was tough, but we'd been married a couple of years at that point, and my wife was far more of a people person and better grounded in the world than I am and was. And she helped keep me on the straight and narrow. We had the kids. So I got a job and it worked because I had to put food on the table. It wasn't like I could just go off and do something. Right. I seriously considered joining a mercenary outfit because not only was I a combat Marine, I was a computer specialist, and we were in very high demand in the early 70s. And she said, no. No, you're not doing that. And I'm glad she did, or I'd have probably been dead in a ditch in Africa someplace. But, you know, she kept me on the straight and narrow. It wasn't easy, but I worked, and I worked full time. You know, I was working at Colgate Palmolive making soap for a while. And then conditions in Kansas City weren't good financially at the time because of construction strikes and so on, union problems. So we moved down to Dallas, and she found work and I found work, and we moved on down the line. And then I went to college and spent 2.5 years getting my degrees. I was motivated to get them, so it didn't take me long. And that gave me a new set of goals. And by the time I got out, I was a desired candidate. MBA, CPA. I had several good offers. Picked Texas Instruments, which was fun, interesting. I learned there that they didn't value business people like they valued engineers. So that was a whole another kick in the teeth. I'd been there a year, and they had the annual meeting, and Jerry Junkins, who was the president at the time, talked about the 5,000 new engineers they'd hired in the previous 12 months and how they'd get these guys and they'd have them in the lab and then bring them out to the business side and back into the lab. And, you know, these were the future of Texas Instruments. And he spent about 10 minutes on that. And then he said, and we hired 1,000 other new graduates, and went on. And I was one of those other 1,000. So I knew my tenure at TI was going to be very short because he basically told me he didn't care about me. So I moved on. and that's fine. TI has never been what they could have been because they're a great engineering company. Don't misunderstand that. Great engineering company. They do wonderful things. They invented the integrated circuit, but they have let business opportunities they invented the personal computer. They had it before IBM did. Watches, calculators. I was in consumer products, lots of things. Shortwave radio, citizen band radios, all kinds of things that they just let piddle away, that they never took to market properly.
Right.
They could have owned the personal computer market. They could own every desktop in the world, but they chose not to.
Right. And that happens too a lot with companies, like, where they do. And like one I learned about was the company TCL. I didn't know that they made the screens for Samsung and LG until they went on and started making their own TVs. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So it's like you look at their TVs and they're just as good as Samsung and LG for like way less in price. And you're like, well, dang, this screen is the same as that screen. It just doesn't look as pretty, because they're basically, boom, square. Here's your TV. Where Samsung and LG do little flares and dares and sparkles and bedazzles to make it look nice, but you still get the same screen. So it's interesting. I didn't know that about Texas Instruments.
In all probability, the computer you're looking at has Texas Instruments chips in it. They're the leader in digital signal processing, without a doubt. They could have been doing the whole computer, but they let that get away from them. Yeah.
So for you, what kind of inspired you and then your wife at the time to start your business? Like, I know you said that you realized that you weren't gonna be in charge of a company, so you started your own. How did that idea happen? Because an idea always comes from somewhere, So like, what caused that to blossom to where you are now?
Well, my last job prior to starting the company, next to the last, I was with JCPenney's. I was assistant controller in their specialty products area. I'd taken over helping run a plant in Arkansas. We'd moved the office staff down to Dallas, and things changed at the top, and they were going to move it back to Stuttgart, Arkansas, out in the rice paddies. And I said no. And they said, well, that's where the job's going. I said, I got a contract. So the lawyers got into it. And my lawyer knew the people at Financial Express, which was a franchise outfit for mobile accounting. So I needed a job because Penny's wasn't paying me anymore while the case went to court. So I took over as COO, Chief Operating Officer at Financial Express. The board was after the management to sell off the original office because they wanted to concentrate on franchising. So I bought it and went into business myself because I liked the concept. We had a couple of mobile vans and we did accounting, and I had payroll on the side, and Ruth came into the business and worked with me, and we had a lot of fun. But it was the final thing at Penny's that just said, I don't want to put up with these assholes. I don't want to live on their whim. I don't want to have to, their whim decides where I'm going to live. No, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. I put up with it when I was growing up, obviously. I put up with it in the military, and I put up with it for 15 years in corporate. We were in Dallas. I took a job in North Carolina. TI had moved me to Lubbock and then moved me back. That's 350 miles. I took a job in North Carolina. I took a job in San Antonio. And I got tired of people telling me, you're going to do what we tell you to do. And screw it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. I want to control my own life. And the only way to do that is control your own income. And the only way to do that is to have your own business. Whether it be just yourself as a consultant or an artist or whatever. But I took control of my life. Well, Ruth and I took control of our lives, our life together. And we made those decisions and we made those choices. And we weren't going to let anybody else tell us what we had to do or where we had to go or, we're changing corporate philosophy, so you're going to do this. Screw you. I ain't going to do it anymore. I got real tired of it in my early 40s, and I said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not going to put up with this bullshit.
Right. And I think
that was the impetus.
And I think that's in the mind of a lot of veterans too, because a lot of veterans are entrepreneurs themselves. It's because they have that drive to do that. Because when you think about it, when you're in the military, you make decisions. So it's like, yeah, there's someone in charge of you, but at the same time, you're in charge of people. So you're making decisions, you're making choices, and you're working. I kind of put it like you're working for yourself at the same time as working for someone else, because they're going to hold you accountable for the decisions you make. So like when you're your own and you have your own business, you hold yourself accountable for your decisions, and well, if you do something crazy, Big Brother's going to come over here and slap you in the head and be like, hey, I'm going to get you. So it's like, so you're working for yourself, which is good, but then, there's always that oversight. But at least when you have your own business, you can control your own hours. You can say, you know what, I don't want to do work today. I want to go on vacation. And then you put stuff in place to do that.
Yeah. And that sounds good. And it's true to a certain extent. But when you're a new entrepreneur, I was on a panel here a couple of years ago, and the question came up, well, what about work-life balance? And I cracked up. I just started laughing. I said, as a new entrepreneur, there is no such thing. Your balance is work, period. And hopefully you have a spouse that understands that. And mine worked with me, so she understood it well. But the first 10 years, we didn't take vacations. Our only way was if I had a conference to go to, and she came along with me. And we may take an extra day in someplace like Boston or whatever. But no, the first 10 years was 70, 80 hours a week, but that made it work, and that's why we've been in business. We've been in business for 30 years. We had our 30th anniversary last month. So we've been successful, made a nice living off of it, got a nice house up on the lake. I've got a nice retirement planned. Life's been good to us. So
and I think the problem too with entrepreneurs is they expect it to happen quickly.
If you want to be a unicorn, tape a horn to your forehead. Okay. You're not the chances of you being Bill Gates, who's Tesla, whoever he is, Musk, or somebody like that are infinitesimal. The chance of you making a good living as an entrepreneur, pretty damn good if you work at it.
Yeah.
But and this is one of the things that I like to tell people, and I believe in is a pearl of wisdom. And I stole it from Bill Gates. And I used it just this morning talking to one of my staff people. People will overestimate what they can accomplish in a year and underestimate what they can accomplish in a decade. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Business, entrepreneurship, it takes time. You don't start making $1 million a month the first year, with rare exceptions. Even Bill Gates, it was a struggle to get DOS set up and going and get things done and so on. And it wasn't a cakewalk in the beginning. None of it is. So it's a lot of hard work. And if you're lucky, you hit the exact right thing and you become wildly successful. But most entrepreneurs fail once, twice, 3 times. They keep going. If they're serial entrepreneurs, they do it again and again and again. And hopefully they hit one that makes them a nice living, gives them a good income, takes care of their retirement, takes care of their family, raises their kids, puts them through college. Those kinds of things happen. You have made a business, and the millionaire next door is the guy that owns his own business. You don't make that kind of money working for somebody else, with rare exceptions. I mean, if you're Jack Walsh working for GE with stock options and so on, you can get very rich. But again, that's very, very unusual. Most people working for somebody else build up a mediocre retirement over 30 or 40 years and then go stagnate someplace. I'm 72 now. I still work full time. I enjoy it. If Ruth was still alive, we'd probably be traveling a great deal. But without her, what am I going to do? Sit at home by myself? So I come in and annoy my staff and work and write. We just published our 4th book last year, the payroll book. It's a book on payroll for small business, a guide for small businesses and startups. That was a 2-year project. I'm working on another one, trying to outline it at the moment, which will be a more general business book. So I'm having fun. I'm doing things. I was doing some public speaking. I'll do more when COVID stops being the scare that the government likes to beat us all with. So, life's good.
Good. So, last thing we do here on the shows, we have like a little closing statement, basically kind of like, your personal message to veterans or active duty in the midst of transition, getting out, like a piece of advice for them on when they start to approach their endeavors, or some who just kind of need another jump start because they're kind of slacking at the moment.
Again, it's going to go back to what I was just saying a minute ago. It's not a sprint, guys. It's a slog. It's a campaign. You may not make it today. This particular entrepreneur venture may not make it, but you're looking at a long journey. It begins with the first step, and then the second and the third and the fourth. If you expect to be a unicorn, you're going to be disappointed. If you expect its success, you're going to be disappointed. It's a journey. You don't become sergeant major in 6 months.
Right.
You start as a buck private, and you learn and you grow and you experience. You get training, you get mentored, you grow in your capabilities, you grow in your experience and in your knowledge, and that's what allows you to progress in the ranks. Well, it's the same thing in business. You don't just walk into business and be the end-all, be-all. Your military experience, I think, gives you a step up. You understand mission, min, self. The mission comes first. You do whatever it takes to get it done. Then you take care of your men, which is your people that work for you, or your clients, or both. You take care of them. And then you take care of yourself. So you're always going to be last in this, but you get to scrape it off the top in the end, and it can be a pretty good living. It can be a great living, but it's mission, men, and self. And you've got the discipline, having been in the military, both external and internal discipline, to do the hard things that a lot of civilians won't do. They want to work from 9 to 5 for somebody else, take home a paycheck, and plan on a mediocre retirement at 65. That's not what we do as veterans.
Right.
We're smarter than that. We've been better trained than that. We have more experience, more discipline. So it's a long slog, guys, but man, it can be really worthwhile.
Right. That's an awesome message, and that's really, really good. And just so I can add a little more to that, failure is your friend. When you fail, you learn and you get experience, guys and gals. So just know that don't be afraid to fail. And if you fail forward. Don't fail backwards.
Success is, as Patton put it, is how high you bounce when you hit the bottom.
Yep. Perfect. So I appreciate you, Charles, for coming on here, taking a brief time in your schedule to talk to the vets here in the veteran community about, your background experience and giving them a little words of wisdom and stuff like that. And if you want to check out his book, it's in the description. You can follow him here on Facebook at the GetPayroll. I know they shared this podcast on there, so you can follow their page if you want. Down in the description, you can follow me on all of my social media links if you want. Down there, it's under my Firebase and solo link, so you can go there and follow it. Everybody, thank you for tuning in, and then we will see you all next week with our next guest. So everybody have a great Thursday, and see you later.